Welcome back, everybody. My name is Nick. This is Swiftful Thinking, and we're going to switch gears. The last 5 videos, we rebuilt Spotify, and I think it looks awesome. I really do think it looks pretty good. The code wasn't that hard, right? It's just knowing the right code to do, and that's the power of SwiftUI. In this video, we're switching gears from Spotify to Bumble. Bumble's a really popular dating app, and the reason I've picked Bumble to cover next is because it has swiping features. And the swiping UI is really common in iOS apps. I think it gives a lot of developers a headache trying to implement it. I'm going to show you guys how easy we can implement it in SwiftUI. So that's what we're going to build over the next couple of videos. We're not going to start with the swipe gesture, but we will get there. Bumble is incredibly popular and they have a beautiful user interface. Again, we're going to be building this user interface using reusable components. We're going to do it super strategically, just like we did with the Spotify section. Again, if you're just joining, we are going to be reusing some reusable components that we set up in the second video on this playlist. So in the second video, we created some reusable components like image loading views and things like that. So if you are just joining, you might want to watch that video before this one. Probably should watch all of Spotify before this one. But if you're just joining and you wanted to jump ahead, I'm just giving you a heads up that there's a couple reusable components that you might not have in your code base. With that said, let's jump into Xcode and let's build Bumble.
Welcome back, everybody. We're in the SwiftUI in practice playlist. For those of you who are just joining, so far in this playlist, we set up some shared views for all of the screens in our app, and then we covered Spotify. So just to do a quick recap for those of you who are just joining. Firstly, we have an image loader view. So if you're just joining, you might want to create one. We imported SD Web Image SwiftUI, and this is all the code that we have. It's basically just an image that allows us to really quickly get an image on the screen. We've added a database helper where we have fetched products and users. If you want to set this up, the second video in this playlist is the whole setup video. You're going to need this in order to get the mock data that we're going to play around with as we move forward here. This is what a product looks like. This is what a user looks like. And in the last videos, what we did was we built Spotify Home View, and it looks just like this. It's got some cells here. We can click on, we can move forward, we can move backwards. We have some cool animations here. We worked on the stretchy header, which looks really nice, and the nav bar there. In this video, we're going to move on to another app, and we're going to start building the Bumble app. And it is arguably just as cool, if not cooler than this one, because some of the UI, it's very unique. We're going to deal with some swiping behavior and things like that. So we're going to work in the same project. So if you don't have these shared components, you might want to build them out real quick. But without further ado, let's start building out Bumble. So I'm going to right click the navigator and create a new group and call this one, obviously, Bumble. And before we write any code, let's get our color scheme set up. I'm going to jump into the assets folder. So we added a bunch of Spotify colors, and I'm just going to now create another new folder. Let's create a folder here, and I'm just going to call this Bumble Colors. Let's move it outside of the Spotify folder. I'm going to copy one of these, and I'm just going to move it into the Bumble folder. Let's call this one Bumble Black. Why not? And then let's click on it. Let's open it up here. When I'm doing these colors, again, we're not going to deal with dark mode right now. If we wanted dark mode, we would add a dark mode version, variant, no dark mode. I'm going to use the 8-bit hexadecimal, so I can use the hex colors here. And then we're just going to get going. So for the Bumble purposes, we're going to use the same black 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. I'm going to copy, let's make another one here. Let's do Bumble Gray. Click on that one. Bumble Gray is going to have a hex color of 535353, very similar to the Spotify Gray. Again, I don't know if these are the correct colors, but they look good enough. We're going to do a Bumble Light Yellow. Let's click on that one. That hex code is going to be FFE. Copy and paste one more. Let's go Bumble Yellow. This will be their true yellow color, which I think I might have the right hex code for this one because it is pretty public. FFCB37. Beautiful. Let's get a Bumble White going here. Bumble White. The color, we're going to actually use pure white for this one. So we're going to go FFFFFF. And then the last color I think we need is a background color. Let's call this Bumble background yellow. And that's going to be a very subtle yellow. So let's click on that one, and it's going to be FFF7E1. Very slight. It's almost an off-white, but a very light yellow. That's our Bumble colors. And now let's get going here. So in my Bumble folder, I'm going to right-click, create a new group. I'm going to call this components. And I'm going to create another new group, and I'm going to call this core. And in my core, we're going to have the home screen. So let's get started with the right-click, new file, SwiftUI view. Let's call this one BumbleHomeView and click create. And I just realized that I totally forgot to show you guys what we are actually building here. So let's go through the actual finished product real quick. I have a simulator here. So we're using the same API, which I really hate this profile picture of the stupid cat, but we're going to see some other pictures here. But this is the Bumble profile. It's got a bunch of images on it. Obviously, these images look much better when they're actually someone's face, but we have this scroll view here where we have the user's information. We have some buttons on it. We have some about me section. We're going to create these little pills for like some basics and some interests. We have more profile images that are loaded into this. And then at the bottom, there's the X button and the check button. So we can click one of these and go to the next user. So you'll notice here that we have swipe gestures on this, which looks really good. Probably not the exact same swipe gesture that Bumble has, but it's close enough. And when we swipe, I really like that you can see the next item behind it, which is a really good UI. Sometimes people implement swiping and don't actually have it as a stack, so you can't actually see the next one. I really like when you can see the next one as well. I also like the animation that Bumble has, like the little check mark that appears as you start to swipe. So the user knows they're swiping no or they're swiping yes. It looks really good. So that's this screen. We're going to build out this filter component where we can click it and it can animate. We're not going to do anything with that because we're not going to build this trending screen, but it's got a nice animation. And then we're going to build out the chat screen. So we don't have a tab bar, but we're going to add it as this button here. If you click this button, you go to the chat screen. And so this is what we're going to build. So the bottom section is a vertical scroll view and the top section is a horizontal scroll view. So this is very similar to the stories in maybe Instagram or I guess in Bumble as well. The queue, this number represents how many things are in the queue. We're going to add some logic for what the progress is of this chat, whether or not there's new information. We'll show this little circle here. We'll put in your move and kind of polish it up. I think it looks really nice. This looks pretty similar to Bumble if you ask me. So this is what we're going to build. We're going to build this swiping screen first, then we're going to build the chat screen, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Without further ado, let's jump back into our code and get coding. We're going to start with this screen. We're going to build the background and the header layer first. Then we're going to build these filters. And then in the next video, we're going to deal with the actual card and the user profile because there's a lot of logic involved in these swipe gestures and things like that. Let's get going. It looks like the background is white. So let's do a Z stack here. And we're going to start with the color.bumble white. Ignore the safe area. And let's build a header at the top of the screen. So for starters, let's create a V stack here. Let's give it spacing of maybe 8 for now. And at the top, we're going to have a header. So let's start with a simple H stack. I'm going to make the spacing of 0 between these items. Make the text a little bit bigger for you guys. On the left, we have another H stack with just these two buttons here on the left. So let's do an H stack. Again, let's add spacing of maybe 0. And first, we're going to have an image with a system name. Let's go line.horizontal.3. Let's give that some padding of maybe 8. Give it a background of color.blue so that we can see it. It's a nice little tap gesture area. Then on tap gesture, we're going to do some logic. Let's make it black opacity 0.001 so that we can't see it. On the right of that, I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm just going to copy and paste it. This one will be arrow.uturn.left. It's not the exact icon that Bumble has, but it again is close enough. To the right of that little H stack is going to be the Bumble logo. Let's add text here that just says Bumble. I think they do all lowercase, so we'll just leave that for now. Let's do a font of title and a foreground style of .bumble yellow. get the Bumble icon on the screen. Again, that's not the exact font, but it's close enough. And then on the right side, I'm going to do one more icon. So let's copy this icon actually, and just paste it down here. And this icon, we're going to do slider.horizontal.3. So I got the filters on the right side. All right, now a couple problems. It looks like all these icons are a little too small. So on the entire H stack here, let's just add a font of maybe title 2 and a font weight of medium, make them a little bit thicker, and a foreground style. Let's do the Bumble black. Now I have 3 objects in this H stack. Let's put a background on them. Background color.red. We'll make the last one red, and we'll make this one maybe blue. So I got 3 objects here, and I want to make sure that these are evenly spread across so that this is right in the middle. If you were with me in the Spotify stuff in the last video, I made a Z stack for the header. And so we put the text on a different layer from the back button. This way it was very easy to have different frames and have the text stay in the middle. In this scenario, we're going to do it slightly different. Instead, we're just going to have one component on the left, one component on the right, and one component in the center, which is what we have. And we're going to make all 3 of those components max width so they have equal width horizontally. So the way to do that, I'm just going to add, let's do before this frame, let's do a frame with a max width of infinity. And for this one, let's align it to the leading edge. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste another one on the Bumble text here. This time the alignment, we're going to do center. So center aligned, and let's do it before the background so that we can see it. And then we're going to do one more time on the third one, and we're going to do alignment trailing. So now you can see we have 3 equal sized sections that are all max width. And Bumble is exactly in the center because it's the same width as the other 2. So let's delete these backgrounds. And that looks like our header is good to go. What I'm going to do is take this H stack here and all of these modifiers and cut them. I'm going to come down below the body, make a private var, call this the header of type SumView, and open up brackets. Paste that in, and let's put our header at the top of the screen. Let's add a spacer here so that we can push it up just for now. That looks pretty on par. On the whole V stack, let's just add maybe some padding of 8 just to push it off the edges of the device a little bit. Nice. We're going to build one more component in this video, and it's going to be this filter section here. So you can see we got this really cool animation between these 2. We're going to get some practice here using the match geometry effect, which we use very rarely because it's kind of tricky to use, but this is a perfect place where we can use it. I love this animation. It looks very smooth. Let's build this as a reusable component so that we can reuse this filter bar if we needed to. What we're going to do is open up the navigator here in our components section. Let's right click, create a new file, a SwiftUI view, and let's call this the Bumble filter view. Click create, jump inside. Firstly, when I look at this component, I want to inject the values that are going to be the title here, because I can imagine a situation where my product team comes in and says, hey, let's change the text from everyone to something else. Or let's add maybe a third tab here. I don't want to have to rewrite my entire component because it's coupled just to everyone in trending. So we're going to pass in these values so that they can be dynamic, and this is truly a reusable component. Let's call those the options. We'll say var options of type array of string. I think string is all we need here. And let's just say, for example's sake, we're going to do everyone and trending. Before we finish the initializer, let's start building the component here. It's going to be an H stack. And I'm going to open the brackets. And in this H stack, I'm going to loop on each of the options. So we're going to create a horizontal, and then we're going to build this cell, and then it's going to build this cell. And then if there was more, it would build a third cell as well. So let's go for each options. Options are strings. Strings are hashable. So we'll use the ID \self to refer to the hash value of the string. For each option in, and open the brackets here. We'll create a quick little V stack, because we know exactly what it's going to look like. It's just the text. That is the option itself. Let's give that text a frame with a max width of infinity. So it's as big as possible, and they're equidistant among each other. I'm going to give that a background color.red just so that we can see it for a second. Let's give it a font of maybe subheadline and make it a little bit thicker with a font weight of medium. Below it, we're going to add the little black bar that is based on the selected state. You see the black bar here. So let's make that just a rectangle. We're going to add a rounded rectangle, corner radius of 2, and a frame. We're just going to do a height of 1.5. So a very small little rectangle. You can see it right there. And let's make sure the spacing between these two, let's maybe give it a spacing of 8. All right, on this VStack, let's set up the color scheme. So we're going to add a foreground style. You can see here that if it is selected, it is black, but if it's not, it's kind of an off gray. So we're going to change that, and we need a value for whether or not it is selected or not. So what we're going to do here is create an @state private var selection of type string. And I'm going to set it equal to everyone for now. So we're just going to say if the selection is equal to the option that we are looping on, let's make it Bumble black. Otherwise, let's make it Bumble gray. Cool. I can see this is gray here. Let's get rid of that background of red for a second. That's looking good. We also only want the line to appear if it is selected. So let's go here and say if selection is equal to option, then we'll draw that rectangle on the screen here. And now let's add tap gesture so that if I tap on this, on tap gesture, let's set the selection equal to the option. So I click it, it now works. Now we got a couple problems here off the bat. We can see that it's kind of bouncing up when I click on it, right? And you're probably wondering why that is. And that's obviously because we're drawing in this rectangle. So if I put a background on this frame here, color.blue, we can see that, let's do blue, sorry. And we can see that the frame is physically changing between these two. And these two are both in an H stack. So really what we want to do is, even if the frame is changing, we want these to be aligned not to the center, but to the top of the object. So then the H stack will add an alignment of top. So now when I click it, at least the text is not animating now. If I comment out the background color, and I try to click maybe over here, right? So see the background color, I got this little blue area here. If I try to click on it, I can't actually click on it because there's no background, just like we had with all of our icons before. So what I'm actually do is make this color.black opacity 0.001. So it's easier for the user to actually tap on it. When we put this on the screen, we're going to actually have some padding. It doesn't actually go all the way to the edge of the device. It's going to go a little bit inward. So what I'm going to do here is add just some padding on the preview here. Cool. And then I want to actually increase the spacing between these two cells. So again, if I make this color.blue, we can see here, the spacing's not that big. And I really want to push these outward a little bit, so they're a little further away from each other. So on the H stack, let's just add spacing of maybe 32, push it out a little bit. Let's make this black. Opacity 0.001. I also want to add a little bit of padding here because we can see the text is really close to the top of this object. So let's just add some padding, maybe top of 8. Look a little bit better. Let's set this back to black, opacity 0.001. And we're going to use a match geometry effect to animate this. So firstly, let's add some animation. Let's do it let's do it on the H stack. So outside of the for each loop, we're just going to add some animation. I like to use the smooth. It looks really good. And we're going to animate on change of selection. So if I click this, it's starting to look a little bit better now. Now we're going to use the match geometry effect, which is, I think, rarely used in SwiftUI because it's kind of really hard. We don't need to use match geometry effect here, but I think this is a cool use case for it. So what we're going to do is on the object, we're going to add a dot matched geometry effect. We're going to give this object an ID. And so when an object with the same ID is removed from the screen on this one, and it's added to the screen on this one, the match geometry effect is going to know, hey, this object has the same ID. It's actually the same object. Let's animate between those two instances. So for here, let's just call this the selection. And we need a namespace. So up here, I'm just going to create a namespace for this view. make it a private var. I'll call it namespace. Let's just pass that in here. Now, if I click on these two, we get this really nice animation because it knows that this is the same bar on both cells and it's animating between the two. And I think that looks really nice. Great. And on this filter component, we're actually going to make it a binding because I want the state of which one is selected to be actually held in my home view. Because if I was using like MVVM, or even if I wasn't using MVVM, I want to be able to load up the data and manually say, which filters are we adding into this option? And then which one is currently selected? I don't want it to always be this selection every single time. So we're going to make this actually binding, and we don't need to make it private so that we can actually access the initializer. We don't need this as well. What I'm going to do is actually create a quick preview here. So we're going to call this a file private struct. I like to call it the Bumble filter view preview. Make it a view. Every view needs a body. Let's pass in a Bumble filter view here. And we need to pass in the options and bind to the selection. So here we're going to say add state private var selection. And let's just copy this, paste it here. And then the selection is just going to be equal to everyone for now. Pass that in. This will be binding, and this will be the options. So down here, I'm just going to put the filter preview on the screen. And this is kind of the setup that I'm going to have from my code base. So this way, if I was calling this from the home view, right, I can add in my view model or wherever, I can add in any options that I want. I can add a third one even, like hello world. And very simply, I have this total customizable filter view, and I can change the starting state if I wanted to programmatically. So this is looking really good. Let's jump back to my home view, BumbleHomeView. And actually what we're going to do is copy literally the options and the selection. Let's jump back to our home view. I'm going to come up here and let's paste in exactly what we just did. I'm going to make the options an at state, just in case maybe I want to change the options on the fly rather than just have it the same options for the entire life cycle. Let's give the starting state as everyone. And underneath the header, we're going to add the Bumble filter view. Let's pass in our options. Options, let's actually call these filters because of the filter view. And let's call this selected filter. So the filters and then the selected filter will be binding here. Let's see if that loads up quickly. Awesome. I want to add a little bit of more padding here. Let's maybe go 12. And then if you look at the actual Bumble app, there's this tiny little line that pops up here. It's the divider that is actually behind the black line. It's kind of hard to see it, but there's a little divider there. So what we're going to actually do is just add a background onto this. And we're going to add in a divider. See if we can see it. You can see the lines right in the center. And that's because the background is right in the center. But backgrounds also have alignments. And let's go to the bottom. So align it to the bottom of the background. Now we have basically both of those, the selection and the divider, in line with each other, which looks really nice. Put that on one line. The last thing I'm going to do is actually take this selected filter. I'm going to make it an app storage. Let's use the key Bumble home filter and we'll set it equal to everyone as well. So now this is saved in app storage. So just kind of like a cool kind of user experience here. With this little tweak in my code, it's going to save the state that the user's in. So if the user is clicked on trending and then closes the app, reopens the app, app storage is going to say, hey, the last selected filter was trending and we're going to start on the trending state. Like maybe we want that, maybe we don't want that, but I'm adding this just to show you how easily we can now start to customize our code base, just simple little tweaks like that. That is it for this video. We got started on our BumbleHomeView and we have a lot left to go. In the next video, we're going to start working on the actual profile screen here, which is going to take a lot of logic, but it's going to be a lot of fun. That's all for this one. Thank you guys for watching. As always, my name is Nick. This is Swiftful Thinking, and I'll see you in the next video.